The first thing I should say is that I was not standing there with binoculars, popcorn, and a criminal lack of hobbies. I was making coffee at 10:43 on a Thursday night, wearing sweatpants with a paint stain on one knee, when the woman across the alley pulled her sweater over her head and caught me looking through my kitchen window. For half a second, neither of us moved. Rain ran down the glass between us. Her apartment was warm and golden. Mine was blue and dark except for the stove light. She had one arm still tangled in the sweater, her dark hair falling over her face, and I had a mug in my hand that suddenly weighed as much as a car battery. Then she stared straight at me. I froze. She reached for her window latch. I thought, great. This is how I die, not in a heroic way, not saving a child from a burning building, just murdered by a rightfully furious neighbor with excellent posture. The window screeched open. Cold rain air rushed into the alley, and she said, "If you're going to look that guilty, Caleb, at least tell me if this dress is too much." That was the first time Lila Bennett spoke to me like we were already in the middle of something. My name is Caleb Morris. I'm 34, a furniture restorer in Portland, which means I spend most of my days bringing scratched tables and broken chairs back from the dead. It also means I'm better with things that have already fallen apart than I am with people who are in the process of doing it. I'd lived in apartment 3C for 8 months. Lila lived across the narrow alley in 3D of the next building, close enough that if we both opened our windows at the same time, we could have passed a cup of sugar with a decent throwing arm. I knew small things about her. She watered basil on her sill every morning. She sang when she thought no one could hear, usually old Motown songs, badly enough to be human and sweetly enough to make me listen. She left at 7:15 carrying a canvas tote full of sheet music. She came home tired, kicked off her shoes, and sometimes stood in her kitchen eating cereal out of a mixing bowl like civilization had personally disappointed her. I had never meant to watch her, but buildings like ours made strangers into accidental witnesses. You learned who burned toast, who fought on the phone, who danced alone, who stood in the kitchen after midnight looking like they were trying to remember what happiness felt like. Lila apparently had learned things about me too, because she knew my name. I cleared my throat and looked at the ceiling, which did not need my attention but got it anyway. I wasn't, I mean, I didn't mean to. Caleb. Her voice had laughter tucked under it. I lowered my eyes just enough to see her face, not the rest of her. She had changed into a deep green dress now, one shoulder bare, the fabric elegant instead of flashy. Her cheeks were flushed, but she didn't look embarrassed. If anything, she looked amused. And that made me more embarrassed, because I had no defense against a woman who could catch me at my worst and still choose humor. "I'm sorry," I said. "I was making coffee. I looked up. Terrible timing." I turned away, but not fast enough. I noticed. "I deserve that." "You do." She tilted her head. "So, too much?" I blinked. "You're asking me? You're the only man currently available in the alley. That's a very exclusive category. Don't let it go to your head." I risked another glance. The dress made her look like someone who had decided to be braver than she felt. I don't know why I thought that. Maybe it was the way her fingers kept smoothing the same seam at her waist. Maybe it was because I recognized that kind of armor. "No," I said. "It's not too much." Her teasing expression softened just slightly. "It's the kind of dress," I added, "that makes people wish they'd tried harder." The words came out before I could dress them in sarcasm. For a moment, rain filled the silence. Lila's hand rested on the window frame. That was dangerously close to a real compliment. I restore antiques for a living. Sometimes sincerity leaks out. Messy profession. You have no idea. She smiled then, and I felt it in a place I hadn't used in a while. 2 years earlier, I'd been engaged to a woman named Erin who loved plans more than people. When she left, she did it efficiently. One conversation, 3 boxes, and a forwarded wedding deposit receipt with the note that said, "I think we both knew." I hadn't known. That was the problem. After that, I got careful. Careful with invitations. Careful with eye contact. Careful with women who sang in kitchens across alleys and made green dresses look like a dare. Lila glanced over her shoulder at something inside her apartment, then back at me. "Can I ask you something awkward?" More awkward than the current situation? Fair point. She leaned closer to the window, and the alley suddenly felt less like empty space and more like a charged wire between us. Do you have plans Saturday night? I laughed once because it was safer than answering too fast. My plans were to sand a walnut credenza and pretend that counts as a social life. Perfect. Low standards. I like it. That's going on my business card. She bit her lip, and the humor slipped. Underneath it was nerves. My sister's engagement party is Saturday, she said. My mother invited my ex because apparently boundaries are something other families do. There it was, the complication hiding under the dress. I kept my voice easy. That's aggressive. That's my mother. She thinks any relationship can be fixed with enough appetizers and public pressure. Can it? No. Lila looked right at me, but apparently it can be survived with a +1. The rain tapped harder against the metal fire escapes. I should have said no. A normal man would have said no, Benoy. A wise man would have apologized again, closed the window, and returned to his coffee before the night turned into one of those stories friends bring up at barbecues. Instead, I said, "Are you asking me to be your fake boyfriend?" I was going to say emotional support neighbor. That sounds less legally binding, also less likely to make my ex stop calling me sweetheart in front of my parents. Something in my chest tightened. Not jealousy. That would have been ridiculous. I didn't know her well enough to be jealous, but I knew enough to dislike any man who used a soft word like a leash. Lila must have seen my expression change because her voice gentled. You don't have to. I shouldn't have asked. She exhaled, embarrassed for the first time. You seem steady, and you looked at me like I was a person, even when you were mortified. That undid me more than the dress had. I set my mug down. Saturday night? 7. Do I need a suit? Do you own one? I own one that says, I had one serious life event and survived it. That might be exactly the mood. We both smiled, and it felt dangerous in a quiet, adult way. Not reckless, not cheap. Just the kind of moment that opens a door you thought you'd locked. Then her window dropped suddenly with a violent wooden slam. Lila yelped and jumped back. I moved before thinking. You okay? She shoved the window up an inch, but it stuck crooked in the frame. Through the gap, she laughed breathlessly. I'm fine. My building is held together by pain and denial. I can fix that. Her eyes lifted to mine through the rain-streaked glass. Of course you can, she said, softer now. There was a pause, then she pointed toward the fire escape between our buildings. If I let you come over with your toolbox, are you going to behave like a gentleman? I looked at her green dress, then at her face, and made myself answer the only way that mattered. Yes. Her smile returned, smaller but warmer. Too bad, she said. I was hoping for at least a little trouble. And then she unlocked the fire escape window all the way. Crossing from my window to Lila Bennett's fire escape felt absurdly intimate for something that involved rainwater dripping down my collar. I climbed out with my toolbox in one hand and one shoe nearly slipping on the metal grate. Lila stood inside her apartment holding the window up with both hands, green dress catching the warm lamplight. Careful, she called. I'd hate to explain to the paramedics that my neighbor fell because I flirted irresponsibly. You're admitting it was flirting? I'm admitting nothing without legal counsel. I crouched by the frame, rain ticking against my shoulders. The wood had swollen from years of Portland weather and neglect. One hinge was loose, the sash cord frayed. Easy repair if you knew what to look for. That was the problem with some broken things. From the outside, they looked dramatic. Up close, they mostly needed patience. Can I come in? I asked. I need to get at the inside track. Lila stepped back. Only because you asked like a man who's been house-trained. Her apartment smelled like vanilla candles, basil, and something sharp and floral I would forever associate with her skin. There were stacks of sheet music on the piano, a pair of red heels by the couch, and a half-finished mug of tea sitting on a book titled The Body Keeps the Score. I pretended not to notice that last one. She noticed me pretending. You can look, she said quietly. I'm not fragile, just working on things. I set my toolbox down with more care than necessary. Aren't we all? Her eyes held mine for a second, and the teasing between us shifted into something slower. Then she pointed at the window. Fix, handyman, before I start thinking you came over for my personality. I did come over for your personality. Liar. You came over because I wore the dress. The dress made a strong opening argument, I admitted. She laughed, and I felt ridiculously proud. While I worked, she perched on the arm of the sofa, one bare foot tucked behind the other. I could feel her watching me the way I'd watched furniture under my hands. Not judging, just curious. So, she said, Caleb Morris, furniture restorer, coffee at night, one tragic event suit. What's your damage? I glanced over. You lead with that often? Only with men I invite in through windows. Fair. I tightened the hinge. I was engaged once. Her face softened immediately. No joke, no flinch, just attention. What happened? She left. I worked the screwdriver carefully. Not dramatically, no screaming, no affair that I know of. She just looked at the life we were building and realized she didn't want to live in it with me. Lila was quiet. I'm sorry, she said. I shrugged, but it wasn't convincing even to me. It was 2 years ago. Time doesn't make something small. That made my hand still. Most people rush to tell you the wound should be healed by now. Lila simply allowed it to have existed. I looked at her. What about your ex? She picked at a loose thread on the sofa. Adrian, charming in public, exhausting in private. He never hit me, never cheated, never did anything clean enough for people to understand why I left. You don't need a courtroom-level reason. Her mouth curved sadly. Tell that to my mother. I will, if you want. That surprised her. You'd argue with my mother at an engagement party? I restore chairs from the 1800s. I have experience with stubborn antiques. She stared at me for one beat. Then she burst out laughing so hard she had to cover her mouth. The sound filled her apartment and seemed to shake something loose in me. I wanted to hear it again, often, preferably from across a table, preferably because of something I'd said. There, I said, testing the window. It slid up, then down, smooth as breath. No more guillotine. My hero. Window hero. Very specific category. She hopped off the sofa and came closer to try it herself. Too close, really. Her shoulder brushed my arm as she reached for the frame, and the contact was small but electric. We both noticed. Neither of us moved away. She slid the window up. Impressive. I'm available for all your minor structural emergencies. Only minor? I turned my head. She was right there, close enough that I could see a tiny freckle near the corner of her mouth. My voice dropped before I could stop it. Major ones, too. Lila's fingers rested on the sill. Her smile faded, but not from fear. Caleb, she said, and my name sounded different in her apartment, like an invitation. I wanted to kiss her. The want was sudden and inconvenient and absolutely clear. But she had asked me here 5 minutes after catching me accidentally looking into her window. She was wearing a dress for an event involving an ex. I was standing in her living room with a screwdriver in my hand and rain in my hair. So I took half a step back. Her eyes tracked the movement. Gentlemen, she murmured, trying. Is it difficult? Right now? Yes. I met her gaze. Yes, Agubao. That was the most honest thing I'd said in months. Color rose in her cheeks, and she looked away first, but she was smiling. She walked to the kitchen and returned with a towel. Instead of handing it to me, she reached up and dried rain from my hair herself. It was a simple gesture, practical, almost domestic. It nearly ruined me. Her knuckles brushed my temple. The towel smelled like clean cotton and her laundry soap. I stood perfectly still, letting her fuss over me while the repaired window hummed softly with rain behind us. You're very quiet, she said. I'm trying not to do anything stupid. What if I like a little stupid? Then I'm in real trouble. Her laugh this time was quieter. She lowered the towel but didn't step back. Saturday, she said. If you still want to come, I don't want to fake anything too cruel. No elaborate lies. No pretending we've been together for a year. What do you want? The question landed heavier than I meant it to. Lila looked down at the towel twisted between her hands. I want to walk in with someone who doesn't make me feel small. You won't. And if Adrian tries to pull some charming nonsense, I'll let you handle him unless you look at me like you want backup. She studied me. That's a good answer. I have occasional bursts. Her expression warmed. Maybe we don't call it fake boyfriend. No. Maybe we call it a first date with witnesses. My heart did something embarrassingly young. A first date? I repeated. Unless you'd rather sand your credenza. The credenza suddenly feels very patient. She smiled, but there was vulnerability beneath it. Good. We stood there, holding each other's eyes, the apartment quiet around us. Then Lila rose on her toes and kissed my cheek. Not my mouth. Not yet. Her lips touched just beside the corner of mine, warm and brief and deliberate enough to be a promise instead of an accident. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright. Payment for services, she said. That window was in worse shape than I thought. Might require a follow-up visit. Greedy. Motivated. She walked me to the fire escape and I climbed back into the rain with my toolbox lighter than it had any right to be. Before I crossed to my window, she called, Caleb? I looked back. She leaned against the frame, green dress, bare shoulder, smile like trouble she'd chosen on purpose. Wear the tragic suit. I grinned. For our first date with witnesses? For me, she said. And then she closed the window softly, leaving me outside in the rain, already wanting Saturday more than was safe. Saturday evening, my tragic suit looked less tragic than I remembered. It was charcoal, a little tight in the shoulders, and still carried the emotional residue of the last wedding I had almost attended as the groom. I stood in front of my mirror trying to decide whether my tie said dependable man or substitute math teacher when my phone buzzed. Lila, are you dressed? Me. That depends on whether you're asking as my date or my parole officer. Lila, both. Window. I crossed to the kitchen. Across the alley, Lila stood at her open window in the green dress, hair pinned up with a few loose curls at her neck. She looked elegant, nervous, and unfairly beautiful. She lifted a hand. Turn around. What? Let me see the suit, Morris. I obeyed, slowly rotating like a department store mannequin with anxiety. Her eyes traveled over me with enough appreciation to make my collar feel too tight. Well, I asked, the suit is not tragic. No. No, it's quietly devastating. I looked down to hide a smile. That sounds dangerous. It is. She leaned on the sill. You clean up well. So do you. I was already clean. You know what I mean. Her mouth softened. For a second, the alley disappeared. No rain tonight, no accidental voyeurism, no awkward arrangement. Just her looking at me like she was glad I existed in a suit across from her. Then she said, meet me downstairs in 10 before I lose my nerve. I got there in 7. Lila was waiting outside her building beneath the awning, clutching a small black purse. Up close, I noticed the tiny gold earrings shaped like stars and the faint pulse at the base of her throat. You came early, she said. I didn't want you waiting alone. That's either sweet or a sign. You're punctual in an alarming way. Both can be true. She laughed, and the tension in her shoulders eased. Then she held out her hand. Not her arm, her hand. I looked at it, then at her. We should practice, she said. For the witnesses. Right, practice. Her fingers slid between mine, warm and certain. Whatever clever thing I'd planned to say dissolved. Holding her hand should not have felt like a line crossed, but it did. A quiet one. A chosen one. The engagement party was at a restaurant with exposed brick, low lights, and the kind of appetizers that made use words like reduction. Lila's sister Tessa greeted us with a hug that nearly knocked Lila sideways. You brought someone, Tessa whispered loudly. I did. Tessa looked me up and down, then smiled. Good, you have kind eyes. I've been practicing in the mirror, I said. Lila squeezed my hand. Don't encourage him. Her parents were next. Her father, Martin, shook my hand like he was grateful for any man who arrived without drama. Her mother, Celeste, wore pearls and an expression sharp enough to slice citrus. "Caleb," she said, "and how long have you and Lila known each other?" "Long enough for him to fix my window," Lila answered. Celeste blinked. "Your window?" "It was sticking," I added. "Old buildings need patience." Lila's thumb brushed mine under the cover of our joined hands. "A thank you, maybe. Or steady yourself." It worked either way. For 20 minutes, we were almost normal. We drank champagne, we admired Tessa's ring. Lila told me which cousins were safe and which ones treated family gatherings like competitive sport. Then Adrian arrived. I knew it was him before Lila said a word. Charming in public, exhausting in private. He moved through the room like applause was expected and only delayed. Tall, polished, expensive watch. He kissed Celeste on both cheeks and made her laugh. Lila's hand tightened around mine. I leaned close. "Want backup?" She looked at me and I saw the decision pass through her eyes. "No," she said softly. "But don't let go." "I won't." Adrian reached us with a smile already prepared. "Lila, you look beautiful." "Thank you." "And this is?" "Caleb," she said. "My date." Date. Not neighbor, not cover story, not emotional support anything. My chest warmed. Adrian offered his hand. "Good to meet you." I shook it. "Likewise." His grip was firm in the way of men who believed every greeting was a contest. "So how did you two meet?" Lila's mouth twitched. "Through a window." I coughed into my champagne. Adrian looked between us. "Interesting." "It was," she said. The way she said it did something to me. Not because it was suggestive, though it was a little, but because she didn't shrink. She didn't explain herself into something smaller for his comfort. Adrian's smile thinned. "Well, I hope he knows how lucky he is." I turned to Lila before answering. "I'm aware." Her eyes flicked to mine. There was no performance there. Just surprise, then warmth. Adrian said something else, but I barely heard it. Lila was looking at me like I'd handed her something she didn't know she was allowed to want. When he finally drifted away, she exhaled hard. "Too much?" I asked. "No," she swallowed. "Exactly enough." The speeches began. Then the toasts, then music, soft and jazzy, filled the restaurant. Couples started moving in the small, open space between tables. Lila watched them with a wistfulness she tried to hide. I set down my glass. "Dance with me." Her eyebrows rose. "Do you dance?" "Badly, but with conviction." "That's my favorite style." I let her out before I could overthink it. Her hand settled on my shoulder, mine at her waist, careful at first. Then the song slowed and she stepped closer until her body aligned with mine. "I'm sorry about Adrian," she murmured. "Don't be. He makes everything feel like a test." "You passed before you walked in." She looked up at me. "You say things like that on purpose?" "Sometimes they escape." Her smile faded into something tender. "I almost canceled tonight." "Why didn't you?" She hesitated. "Because you looked happy when I called it a first date, and I wanted to see that look again." That hit me square in the chest. I pulled her a little closer. "Lila?" "Yes?" "I'm not here because of him." Her fingers tightened at my shoulder. "I know this started strangely," I said. "And I know we were supposed to be proving something to other people, but that's not why I put on the suit." "No?" "No, I came because you asked, and because I wanted to be the man standing next to you." The song moved around us. Her eyes shone, but her smile was real. "Caleb Morris," she whispered. That was dangerously close to romantic. "I'm a hazard tonight." "Good." Then she kissed me. Not a cheek this time. Her mouth met mine softly in the middle of the restaurant with her family nearby and her ex somewhere behind us, and absolutely none of them mattering. For one stunned second, I forgot how to breathe. Then I kissed her back, my hand firm at her waist, hers sliding to the back of my neck. It wasn't a performance, it was quiet and deliberate, and a little trembling. A first kiss with witnesses, maybe, but it belonged only to us. When she pulled away, her forehead rested against mine. I wanted to do that before we arrived, she said. You showed remarkable restraint. I'm done with restraint. I laughed softly. Should I be worried? Probably. We stayed like that until the song ended. Later, outside on the restaurant patio, she slipped away from the noise and I followed, only after she looked back for me. The city air was cool, smelling of rain and traffic. Lila leaned against the brick wall, still holding my hand. You okay? I asked. I am. She glanced through the window at the party. For the first time at one of these things, I don't want to disappear. I'm glad. She studied my face. Are you? With you? I said. Very. Her smile came slowly, beautiful and unguarded. Then my phone buzzed. So did hers. Inside, Celeste's voice rose in startled protest. Through the glass, I saw Adrian standing too close to Tessa's fiancé, smiling like a match dropped near gasoline. Lila closed her eyes. Of course. I squeezed her hand once, then lifted it and kissed her knuckles. Hey, I said, whatever that is, we'll deal with it after this. After what? I drew her close and kissed her again, because I had learned one thing already. With Lila, the emergency could wait 10 seconds for the truth. When we parted, her breath shook. Now, I said, we can go back in. She nodded, still looking at my mouth. Okay, she said, but stay near me. I smiled. Try getting rid of me. We went back inside, still holding hands. That mattered. Not because Adrian glanced down and noticed. Not because Celeste's eyebrows climbed half an inch. It mattered because Lila didn't loosen her grip when the room turned toward us. Near the bar, Adrian stood with Tessa's fiancé, Miles, one hand lifted in that polished, reasonable way men used when they were being insulting but wanted credit for staying calm. I'm only saying, Adrian said, some people rush into commitments because they like the idea of being chosen. Tessa's face had gone pale. Miles looked like he was deciding whether punching a guest would ruin the deposit. Lila stepped forward. Adrian? He turned, all innocence. Lila, I didn't see you. Yes, you did. A small silence fell. I stayed beside her, close enough that our shoulders touched, but I didn't speak. She had not asked me to rescue her. She had asked me not to let go. So I didn't. This is my sister's engagement party, Lila said. Her voice shook once, then steadied. You don't get to bring your little theories about love into it because you're angry I stopped listening to them. Adrian's smile faltered. That's not what I was doing. It is. She lifted her chin. And I'm embarrassed I used to confuse this with charm. Someone coughed. Tessa covered her mouth, but her eyes were bright with pride. Celeste moved toward Lila. Sweetheart, maybe this conversation should happen privately. No, Lila said. One word. Clean as a match strike. Her mother stopped. Lila's hand tightened around mine. I spent a year making myself smaller so everyone else could stay comfortable. I'm done. Adrian looked at me then, like maybe I had installed this backbone with the window repair. I gave him nothing. After a strained pause, Miles said, Adrian, I think you should leave. Adrian laughed once. Seriously? Tessa stepped beside Miles. Yes. That did it. Adrian's mask slipped just enough to show irritation underneath. He collected his coat, kissed Celeste's cheek again because of course he did, and walked out without looking back. The room exhaled. Then Tessa crossed to Lila and hugged her hard. I love you, she whispered. Lila laughed shakily. I love you too. Sorry I made a scene. You made the best scene. A few people clapped, not a lot, just enough to make Lila blush crimson and press her forehead briefly to my shoulder. Can we leave? She murmured. Absolutely. Outside, the city had turned silver with mist. We walked 3 blocks before either of us spoke. Her hand stayed in mine, swinging slightly between us, no longer for show. At the corner, Lila stopped under the glow of a street lamp. I'm shaking. I took off my jacket and draped it over her shoulders. Cold? No. She looked up at me. Free. The word was small, but it landed huge. I wanted to kiss her then, but I waited. I was learning the shape of her silences. She stepped closer. This is the part where you kiss me, Caleb. Oh, thank God. Her laugh broke against my mouth as I kissed her. It was different from the kiss in the restaurant. No witnesses, no ex, no family, just wet pavement, distant traffic, and Lila's hands sliding under my open shirt collar as if she'd been waiting all night to touch skin. I backed her gently against the brick wall of a closed bookstore, one hand at her waist, the other braced beside her head. She kissed like she had decided not to apologize for wanting. Soft, then hungry. Careful, then not. When we finally separated, she kept her fingers curled in my tie. Quietly devastating, she whispered. You're revising your review? Upgrading it. I smiled against her temple. Good. We found a late-night diner 2 blocks from my building because neither of us wanted the night to end. Lila sat across from me in my suit jacket, green dress beneath it, hair coming loose from its pins. She looked less like a woman dressed for a party and more like a woman returning to herself. We ordered fries and 2 milkshakes like teenagers with better credit scores. So, she said, stealing a fry from my plate even though she had her own, you kissed me in public and against a bookstore. Are you always this literary? I adapt to my surroundings. What happens near a hardware store? You'll have to find out. She smiled into her milkshake straw, and I felt absurdly lucky to be there. Then her expression turned thoughtful. You were quiet in there when Adrian started. You didn't need me talking over you. No, she studied me. But you stayed. I said I would. People say things. I know. Something in my voice must have given me away because her teasing vanished. Your fiancé didn't? She said a lot of things. I rubbed my thumb along the edge of my glass. Most of them weren't lies when she said them. That was the hard part. Lila's foot nudged mine under the table. Not playful. Present. I think that's what scares me, I admitted. Not being left exactly, being wrong about what's real. She reached across the table, palm up. I took her hand. This is real, she said. I let out a breath. It's also new, she added, and strange, and started with you accidentally seeing more of my evening routine than planned. I will spend years apologizing if necessary. Years? Her eyebrow arched. I realized what I'd said. She did too. The air between us warmed. I didn't mean to sound. I liked it, she said. My heart kicked once. Lila looked down at our hands, her thumb moving over my knuckles. I'm scared too. Adrian made me feel like wanting affection was needy and wanting space was cruel. I don't always know how to ask for things without feeling guilty. Ask me anyway? Her eyes lifted. I might not get it perfect, I said. But I want to learn you. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then she whispered, that may be the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me in a diner. I was aiming for top 5. You're smug now. I've had a milkshake. I'm powerful. She laughed, and the sound wrapped around me. We walked home slowly after midnight. At her building door, she hesitated, still wearing my jacket. Come up? She asked. Every sensible thought in my body went silent. She saw my face and smiled softly. For coffee, and maybe to sit on the couch. And maybe because I don't want to be alone yet. I cupped her cheek, brushing my thumb near that tiny freckle by her mouth. Then I'll come up. Her apartment was dim and warm. She kicked off her heels with a groan of relief and made coffee neither of us needed. We sat on her couch close enough that her knee rested against mine. After a while, she leaned into me. I put my arm around her and she settled there like trust was something physical. I had fun tonight, she murmured. Even with the scene? Especially after. She tilted her face up. You looked proud of me. I was. She kissed me, slow and sweet. Then she rested her head against my chest and we stayed that way until the coffee went cold. At 1:17, my phone buzzed on the table. A text from an unknown number. Stay away from Lila. You don't know what she does to men. I looked at the screen, then at Lila asleep against my shoulder, peaceful for the first time all night. I turned the phone face down and tightened my arm around her. Whatever Adrian wanted, he could wait until morning. Tonight, I chose her. Morning arrived gray and soft. Lila woke with her cheek against my chest, one hand curled in my shirt like she'd made a claim in her sleep and refused to apologize for it. For 5 minutes, I didn't move. Then she stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, found mine, and warmed. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi, did I drool on you?" "A gentleman never tells." "So, yes." "A little." She groaned and hid her face against me. I laughed, and she pinched my side without lifting her head. For a while, that was all we were. Two people on a couch, tangled in the quiet after a night that had changed shape around us. No fake date, no family performance, no ex-boyfriend taking up space. Then my phone buzzed again on the table. Lila felt me tense. "What is it?" she asked. I reached for it, hesitated, then handed it to her. "I got this last night." She read the message. The softness left her face, but she didn't crumble. "Stay away from Lila. You don't know what she does to men." A new text sat beneath it. "Ask her why everyone leaves." Lila stared at the screen for a long moment, then she handed it back. "That's Adrian," she said. I figured. He used to do this after fights. Say something cruel, then wait for me to panic and explain myself. "Do you want to?" Her eyes lifted to mine. "No," she said. "I want breakfast." I smiled slowly. "That is an excellent answer." She smiled back, but there was moisture in her eyes. "And after breakfast, I want to block him. Maybe tell my sister, maybe tell my mother to stop giving him access to me." Big morning. Very. I brushed my thumb along her knuckles. "I'm here." "I know." She squeezed my hand. "But Caleb?" "Yeah?" "I don't want you to become my shield. I want you to be my choice." That sentence settled inside me like a key turning. I leaned in and kissed her forehead. "Then choose me for pancakes." Her laugh came out watery and perfect. "Done." We made pancakes in her tiny kitchen with too much vanilla and not enough coordination. She wore my wrinkled dress shirt over her green dress because she claimed it was culinary armor. I burned the first pancake badly enough that the smoke alarm complained. She stood on a chair, fanning it with sheet music, laughing so hard she nearly lost her balance. I caught her by the waist. For a second, we stopped laughing. Her hands rested on my shoulders, mine stayed at her hips. Morning light traced her cheek, her mouth, the place where nerves and courage lived together in her eyes. "I don't want this to be just because last night was intense," she said. "It isn't." "You're sure?" "I was sure before Adrian sent a single text." She swallowed. "When?" "When you opened your window and asked if the dress was too much." "That early?" "I'm not saying I was rational." "No," she said, smiling. "You were standing there holding coffee like a guilty raccoon. And you still invited me over." "I liked your face." "My face?" "Your guilty, kind, handsome raccoon face." I kissed her because there was no possible response better than that. After breakfast, Lila blocked Adrian. Then she called Tessa, who swore creatively for 3 full minutes and promised to run interference with the family. Then Lila called her mother. I didn't listen. I went to the window and gave her privacy. Across the alley, my own apartment looked oddly distant. My mug was still beside the stove. My life was still there. Tools, unfinished projects, the walnut credenza waiting patiently. But I was not the same man who had stood at that window 3 nights earlier, careful and half asleep in his own life. Behind me, Lila said, "No, Mom, I'm not confused. I'm not being dramatic, and I'm not discussing Adrian anymore." A pause, then softer. "I love you too. But you don't get to invite people into my life just because you miss who I used to be." When she hung up, she stood very still. I crossed the room. "How did it go?" She cried. "I'm sorry." I didn't. Lila looked surprised by that. "I usually do." I opened my arms and she walked into them, not collapsing, not hiding, choosing. That afternoon, I went home through the front door like a normal person, then returned an hour later with actual clothes, my toolbox, and a better latch for her window. Lila watched me install it from the couch. You know, she said, most people bring flowers. I brought security hardware. Romantic. I can also bring flowers. She grinned. Good, I like both. So I brought flowers the next day, basil the day after that because hers was dying and she blamed emotional weather. We moved slowly, but not uncertainly. There were real dates without witnesses. A rainy bookstore afternoon where we kissed in the poetry aisle and got scolded by a woman in a cardigan. A hardware store trip where Lila discovered I did, in fact, flirt near power tools. Sunday mornings with pancakes that improved marginally over time. Adrian sent 2 more messages from new numbers. Lila blocked both, documented them, and didn't answer. Eventually, silence became one more room he no longer owned. Celeste took longer. She apologized badly at first, then better. Tessa got married in the fall, and Lila sang at the ceremony. I sat in the second row, and when her voice trembled on the first line, she found me. I touched 2 fingers to my heart. She smiled and kept singing. 6 months later, the window between our buildings was open again. Spring rain fell into the alley. Lila leaned on her sill in one of my sweaters, hair messy, eyes bright. I stood across from her in my kitchen holding 2 mugs. Careful, she called. If you stare too long, I might make you fix something. I'm hoping it's dinner. You fixed dinner last night. I assembled sandwiches. With confidence. I passed 1 mug across the narrow gap. She reached for it, fingers brushing mine over the rain-dark space between our buildings. We had keys to each other's apartments by then. Half my shirts lived in her closet. Her sheet music had migrated onto my dining table. We still used the windows anyway, because that was where it began. A year after that night, I asked her to move in while we were sanding the old walnut credenza together. She had sawdust on her nose and my pencil tucked behind her ear. She didn't answer right away. She just looked at me, then at the piece of furniture between us, scarred and sturdy and becoming beautiful under our hands. Only if we keep both windows, she said. So we did. And sometimes, even now, I catch her across the room or across the alley, and she catches me catching her. She always smiles first. That is the part I never get tired of. Not the drama, not the X, not even the accidental beginning. The best part is this: being seen and instead of shame or fear, finding someone opening the window. What would you have done if you accidentally caught your neighbor changing and she opened the window to talk to you first? Have you ever experienced something awkward that somehow turned into something meaningful? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.